Hello, it's Phoenix. Have you ever made a New Year's resolution and forgotten all about it by February? Is there something in your life that you've wanted to change so badly for a long time, but nothing you've tried has seemed to work? If so, this video is for you. In this video, I'll show you how you can finally have the breakthrough you've been waiting for. You can finally get rid of what's stopping you from doing and feeling your best. We're going to play what I call the Belief Elimination Game. It takes up to half an hour, and I'll be asking you some questions. So please answer everything out loud. It'll work better that way. Also, I'll ask you to write some things down. Pause the video and take the time you need. Ready? This is going to be an 8-step process, and step 1 is, what's your goal? First, we're going to figure out what you really want, what's most important to you. So that way, the work we do in this video can make the biggest difference. So what do you want right now? If you could have anything at all, what would it be? Just pick one goal, one thing you really want. Pause the video and write down your goal. Step 2, what's the obstacle? Now let's figure out what's stopping you from achieving your goal so we can make your job easier. Look at the goal you just wrote down. Ideally, you would achieve this goal as quickly and easily as you could, right? So what do you think is the biggest obstacle that's making it more difficult? We're not looking for anything external here. We're looking for an inner obstacle. It could be either a feeling that you have or a behavior. For example, if your goal is to make lots of friends, maybe you're too shy and you have too much anxiety that you feel that stops you from connecting with people. Or if your goal is to write a book, maybe you keep procrastinating, and so maybe that could be your obstacle. Pause the video and write down a description of what typically happens, how you feel or how you behave that makes it difficult for you to achieve your goal. Step 3, we're going to find a belief. A lot of times we have beliefs in our head, things that we subconsciously believe, that are keeping us locked into our negative feelings and behavior. For example, you might have the belief, I'm not good enough. It's something that almost everybody grows up believing on some level. And if you feel even a little bit like you're not good enough, then that's something that can cause you to feel worse in your life and also can cause you to do things like procrastinate. So this belief is something that is going to help you to eliminate it no matter what you're trying to change. So that's why we're doing it in this video. How do you know if you have the belief, I'm not good enough? Obviously, it's not something that any of us intellectually agree with usually, but it's still something that can feel true. So pause the video and try saying the words of the belief out loud. I'm not good enough. Be still with yourself, say the words, and just see how it feels. Does it feel true? Even a little bit? When I say a belief that feels true for me, a lot of times it feels negative. You know, I might have some kind of feeling, like a gut feeling in my stomach. I might resist saying it. It has a sense of truth to it, even if I don't want to believe it. Step 4. Now that we've identified I'm not good enough as a belief that we can help you work on, where did you first form that belief? What's the source of it? Once we know how the belief got in your head in the first place, we'll be able to help you get it out. What are the earliest events in your life that led you to feel like I'm not good enough? For most people, a basic belief like I'm not good enough is formed from early interactions with parents or whoever our primary caretakers were. Why is this? Well, our parents are often the people we interact with the most in our formative years, and we tend to intuitively understand that our survival depends ultimately on our parents. We trust that they're the experts on life, that what they do and say is their lessons to understand who we are and how we fit into the world. Most parents love their children a lot, but how do you think a 4-year-old would feel if every time you don't obey what your parent says, or spill something, make a mistake. If your parent has a displeased tone of voice, maybe gets a disgusted look on their face, raises their voice, and says things like, "What's the matter with you? Can't you do anything right? How many times do I have to tell you? Why can't you be more well-behaved like so-and-so?" How would you feel when your parents punish you for not doing what they say? So most parents, even though they instill many empowering things in their kids, they also can't refrain from getting annoyed or frustrated. And to a young child, it seems like it's about them. So maybe you'll be able to find some events like that in your early childhood. A belief like "I'm not good enough" doesn't come from one single event, but from many similar interactions, such as having parents and other people be repeatedly upset or disappointed with you on a recurring basis. And if you can't find it with your parents, what are the earliest events where you really feel like, yeah, that's when I first felt like I wasn't good enough? And just pause the video and write down the types of things that happened. What were the people doing and saying? What occurred that led you to believe I'm not good enough? Great. You're doing an amazing job so far. Thank you for sticking with me. We're at a pretty fun part now. Step 5, alternative interpretations, or the possibilities game. This is where we're going to come up with some other ways of interpreting what happened instead of "I'm not good enough." "I'm not good enough" was what you concluded at the time. Can you see that this was a reasonable conclusion for a child your age to reach? Probably any kid who had the same thing happen would feel like "I'm not good enough" too. But imagine if you were in a room with several trusted friends and you were all watching a videotape of the events that you just wrote down. These friends are going to come up with those alternative interpretations, okay? In these interpretations, I'm going to refer to your parents. Keep in mind that if there are other people than your parents involved in the source of this belief, you can just substitute whoever they were, okay? Okay, so number 1, maybe your parents thought you weren't good enough, but they were just plain wrong. Couldn't that explain what happened just as well as "I'm not good enough" could? Okay, number 2, maybe you weren't good enough as a kid. That didn't mean you would never be good enough. See how that's different from just plain saying "I'm not good enough"? Even if that was true at the time, you might grow up and become good enough. Is that a valid interpretation? All right. Number 3, maybe you weren't good enough according to your parents' standards. You might be good enough in other people's eyes, right? One people's standards doesn't say universally whether you're good enough or not. Sound true? Okay, here's a 4th interpretation that one of your friends might suggest. Maybe your parents just got annoyed sometimes, or they were often critical. They would have reacted that way towards anyone. It was their personality, so it had nothing to do with whether you were good enough or not. Couldn't that explain the events of your childhood just as well as "I'm not good enough"? Awesome. Number 5, maybe your behavior wasn't always good enough. Who doesn't have ways to improve? So your parents reacted that way because they were criticizing a behavior, not you. It didn't mean that who you were as a person was ever not good enough. Some of those 5 interpretations I just gave might have made more or less of a connection with you. Some of them could feel more or less comforting. But the point is that they were all different ways of looking at the same events, and they all contradict your belief "I'm not good enough." They're all different ways of looking at it. So was "I'm not good enough" ever the truth, or was it just a truth? Did he say a truth? Like it's just one interpretation out of many possible interpretations. Got it? Good. Okay. Okay, step 6. Did you see it? Here's what I want you to do. Look at the events you wrote down again. Really imagine being back where you were at that age, seeing what you saw then, hearing what you heard then. You can pause and close your eyes briefly if you need to. And as you're imagining these events, didn't it seem as if you could almost see I'm not good enough in what was happening? Like you could almost point to it. You could point to it and say, see, look, I'm not good enough. The evidence is there. It probably did seem that way at the time. But did you really see it? Did you really see I'm not good enough? Let's go over what I mean by seeing. What do you see right now? Okay, what color is it? This object. What shape is it? Where is it? Did you just say it's purple, it's cylindrical, and it's in my hand? Something like that? Very good. So just like you could see that water bottle, would you agree that anything you can see can be described in terms of color, shape, and location? All right. If so, what color was I'm not good enough? Was it green? What shape was it? Triangular? And where was it? You might have just said it was nowhere other than in my mind. So if you never really saw I'm not good enough out there in the world, what did you actually see? Did I just hear you say that you saw what happened? You know, you saw what your parents did or said? Now, it's possible you could be thinking, well, I actually heard I'm not good enough. You know, I actually heard that said to me. Even if that was the case, did you ever hear that it was true? Of course not. You see, what happened is that these events happened, you know, these people in your early life did what they did, they said what they said, and then your mind gave those events meaning. In this case, I'm not good enough. From then on, whenever you saw, you know, your parents criticizing you or punishing you, it was as if you were literally seeing I'm not good enough, when really that was just a made-up story that your mind was attributing to the events. So before your mind ever decided that this all meant I'm not good enough, what did those events really mean? If someone said something critical of you, what was the real meaning of that? If you were punished in some way, what did that really mean? In other words, what do I know for sure about who you are as a person based on what someone did or said towards you when you were a child? Nothing, right? I can't know anything for sure based on that. These events didn't mean anything at all. They were just meaningless events. It's kind of like if you look outside and you see that it's raining. Now, if you are a sports player and you were going to play a game that day, you might look at the rain and the meaning you give to it is, you know, this is an awful rain that's coming at the worst time, right? On the other hand, if you had some crops that were desperately needing water, it might be, this rain is a wonderful thing. But neither of those meanings is inherent in the rain. The rain is just the rain. And so it's the same thing with your parents' behavior. It doesn't tell you anything about yourself. All that is just the optional meaning. So by now I hope it's clear that there was no inherent meaning in these events at all. We're going to move on to step 8 now, which is all about the feeling. Because even if you realize now you never actually saw I'm not good enough anywhere in the world, you might still feel like what happened to you made you feel like I'm not good enough. I totally get that because that's how I felt too. But we were just talking about how these events had no real meaning. How can meaningless events make you feel something? Think about it. Maybe you just answered that, well, I felt like I'm not good enough because that's the meaning my mind had already given to what happened. Once your mind made up that meaning, then of course, that's how you felt. But to make this really real, we're going to do a little visualization. If you look in the description for this video, you'll find all the alternative interpretations that I talked about earlier listed. Now, what I'm going to have you do is imagine being little again and having those same events unfold. Only this time, you're going to give them one of the other interpretations. Pick your favorite. Which one of those interpretations resonates the most with you or makes you feel the best? I want you to imagine reliving what happened and telling yourself that other interpretation. Imagine if it had occurred to you as a kid. Maybe my parents just get annoyed sometimes, or they're critical. Maybe that's just how they are with everyone, and it doesn't mean anything about me, right? Or if you really liked one of the other interpretations, maybe, my behavior might not have been good enough. Whose is? It doesn't mean that I'm not good enough as a person. So I want you to imagine reliving what happened, but experiencing that other story happening in your mind. If you want, pause the video, close your eyes, make it really real, and enjoy it, and come back when you're ready. Now, as you were imagining the same events, but with a new interpretation, did you still feel like I'm not good enough? Probably not. You probably had a much better feeling, right? Notice that this feeling, I'm not good enough, that you've probably walked around feeling for most of your life, disappeared simply by giving events a different meaning. Okay, I'm so happy you've stuck with this. You're doing amazing. So I actually want you to imagine, what if you had had completely different events as a kid? Imagine what it would have been like to be a child who had those interactions happening day after day. Do you still feel I'm not good enough when you're imagining that? If those had been the actual events of your life, do you think you would have felt I'm not good enough back then? And if you didn't feel that way back then, would you still today? What we just did in this exercise is very interesting. You see, you could have behaved the exact way you actually did in your past, making whatever mistakes you made. If you threw tantrums as a kid like I did, same things. But simply by changing the way other people reacted to you, you being you, suddenly you feel totally good enough. So if it was ever true that you weren't good enough, then why would simply changing other people's reactions totally transform how you felt? So is it real now that I'm not good enough was never the truth about you at all? Good. So take a deep breath and say the words out loud again. I'm not good enough. This is step 8, by the way. We're checking for the belief. Does it still feel true? Even a little bit? When you say a belief and it's been eliminated, it feels flat and meaningless. It's just like saying something that doesn't make sense. It won't feel true anymore. And you won't feel a negative emotion that comes up when you say it, if you don't believe it. If it feels like the belief is still there, that's okay. You can try going back and seeing if there's anything that didn't make total sense the first time that maybe will the second time. It's possible there could be another source of the belief, so you could do the video again for that different source. Or maybe you just have to really get that you never saw the belief, or do the feeling step again. So you're welcome to review anything that might not have been totally clear the first time. Also, if you have any questions, please ask me and I'll help. If it feels like the belief is gone, congratulations! You just eliminated your first belief with the Belief Elimination Game. Well, it's actually called the Lethko belief process, and this is something I learned from Morty and Shelley Lethko. This process basically lets you take something that you once believed was true and eliminate it so that when you say the words it no longer feels true, but also it'll change how you find yourself feeling and behaving. For example, when I eliminated the belief I'm not good enough, I felt more confident in myself. I started being able to talk to people more easily, and I just felt happier to be me. You're probably going to notice some changes. You might feel lighter, you might find yourself acting a bit more the way you want to, but changing just one belief isn't necessarily going to help you totally transform whatever it is that's standing in the way of your goal. If your problem isn't totally solved just by that one belief, you can keep going. The Lethko Institute actually created a program called Natural Confidence that takes you through 19 of the most common beliefs that hold people back from feeling more confident, not caring so much what people think, ending procrastination, and reducing your fear of like anything social or speaking, stuff like that. So you can check out more free videos at recreateyourlife.com to keep going with that and see if it's worth investing in. For me, it definitely was. You can also get sessions from a facilitator who can help you work on your specific beliefs that are unique to you and really give you that one-on-one attention to help you get through whatever's stopping you. And you're welcome to contact me for a free discovery call so we can explore if that's a good path that's going to help you. I hope this was fun, helpful, and insightful. I'm definitely going to be putting more stuff out there to help you blast past whatever is keeping you from being your happiest self. Stay tuned. Let me know if I can help in any way at all. And I wish you a beautiful day.